I want you to picture something. You're alone in someone else's house. The kid is asleep upstairs, the house is quiet, and then you see it, a small blinking light on the bookshelf. You tell yourself it's nothing, a charger, a smart device. But something makes you walk closer. And when you do, your stomach drops, because you know exactly what it is, and you know exactly what it means. That moment changed everything for me. And by the time it was over, the people who thought they had all the power ended up with nothing. This is my story, and I want to tell you exactly how it happened. My name is Katie. I was 22 years old, 3 weeks into a new city, sleeping on an air mattress in a studio apartment that smelled like someone else's life. I had moved to save money for college, a plan that sounded a lot better in my head than it did at 6 in the morning when I was eating gas station coffee and trying to figure out how to make rent. I needed work. Fast. Babysitting seemed like the obvious answer. A few hours in the evening, decent cash. No special skills required. I posted on a neighborhood app, and within 2 days I had a response from a family in one of those neighborhoods where every house looks like it was built to impress someone. The Harmons. That was their name, David and Christine Harmon. They lived in a 4-bedroom colonial with a 2-car garage and a backyard that probably had a name. Christine had the kind of tone on the phone that made you feel like you were already slightly behind schedule. She listed their requirements like she was reading from a contract. No screens after 8, no snacks after 7, shoes off at the door, don't touch anything in the office. Their son was 6 years old. His name was Tyler. She mentioned him almost as an afterthought. I said yes to everything. I needed the money. The first night was completely normal. Tyler was sweet, quiet, a little serious for a 6-year-old, the kind of kid who asks you things like, "Do you think fish get lonely?" We played board games, built a Lego spaceship, watched half a movie before he fell asleep on the couch. I carried him to bed and sat in the living room reading until the Harmons came home just after 11. Christine looked around the room like she was inspecting a hotel checkout. David paid me cash without making eye contact. I said goodnight and drove home thinking, fine, this is fine. I can do this. The second night was when I saw it. I was in the living room waiting for Tyler to finish brushing his teeth when something caught my eye on the bookshelf. A small light, blinking slowly. At first I thought it was a router or a baby monitor, something technical I didn't need to understand, but I walked over, and I leaned in, and I recognized it immediately because I had seen one in a true crime documentary the year before. It was a hidden camera, small enough to hide inside what looked like a decorative clock. I felt the hair on my arm stand up. I stepped back and kept my face completely neutral, and I started looking around the room differently. There was another one in the kitchen, inside a fake plant near the window. One in the hallway pointed at the front door. One on the bookshelf angled toward the couch where I had been sitting for the past 2 hours. I counted 4 in the common areas before I made myself stop looking, and then I needed to use the bathroom. And when I walked in and looked up at the smoke detector on the ceiling, I saw the lens. A camera in the bathroom. A private bathroom that I, a guest in their home, had been using. I sat down on the edge of the tub and I put my hand over my mouth and I just breathed for a minute because I knew that what I was looking at was not a security system. It was surveillance, and the bathroom made it criminal. I finished my shift. I played with Tyler, put him to bed, and sat on that couch for 2 more hours acting like nothing had happened. But my mind was running the entire time. I thought about every move I had made in that house, every room I had walked into, every moment I had assumed I was alone. And then I thought about what I was going to do about it. I am not a confrontational person. I have never been the type to make a scene or start a fight, but I am also not the type to let something like this go. Not something like this. When the Harmons came home, I said goodnight with a smile. I drove 3 blocks, pulled over, and took out my phone, and I went back and photographed every single camera I had found. That night, I didn't sleep. I researched for 4 hours straight. Recording someone in a private space without their consent, specifically a bathroom, is a felony in my state. Not a misdemeanor, a felony. The kind of thing that goes on a permanent record. The kind of thing that can end careers, dissolve marriages, and result in serious prison time. I wrote everything down in a notes app. Exact locations of every camera, time I discovered them, what I had been doing in each room. I recorded a voice memo describing the whole evening while it was still fresh in my mind. I backed everything up to 2 cloud accounts, and then I waited to see what the Harmons would do next. I didn't have to wait long. The next afternoon, Christine texted me asking if I could come in early. Her tone was different, clipped, almost aggressive. The warmth she had performed on the phone completely gone. When I arrived, she was standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed, and David was behind her with that particular expression men get when they've rehearsed something but aren't sure they believe it. Christine said, "We need to talk about some missing money." I felt my stomach tighten, not from guilt, but from recognition. I knew what this was. She said money had gone missing from her purse. She said it had happened on one of my shifts. She said she had proof. I asked to see the proof. She refused. She said they didn't need to show me anything, that they knew what they had seen. David nodded on cue. She said they were considering calling the police, and that in the meantime they would not be paying me for the last 2 shifts because of the outstanding situation. I stood very still. I kept my face as neutral as I could, because in that moment I understood the entire game. They had cameras everywhere. They had been watching me, and now they were going to use that footage, or the threat of it, to avoid paying me. Maybe they had done this before. Maybe I wasn't the first babysitter who had walked into that house and walked out without getting paid. But here is what they did not know. They did not know I had already found the cameras. They did not know I had photographs of all of them. They did not know I had spent the previous night researching exactly what they had done and exactly what it was worth legally. And they absolutely did not know that I had a voice recorder running in my jacket pocket from the moment I had walked through their front door that afternoon. I looked at Christine and I said, "I completely understand your concerns. I'm so sorry this happened. I hope we can figure this out." And I watched her relax. Because she thought she had won, she hadn't even started losing yet. I went home and called a lawyer, not a friend of a friend, not a legal advice hotline, an actual attorney who specialized in privacy law. I explained everything. I sent him the photographs of the cameras. I described the bathroom. I told him about the theft accusation and the withheld wages. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "How quickly can you come in?" I was in his office the next morning. He reviewed everything for 40 minutes without saying much. Then he looked up and said, "You have a strong case on multiple fronts. The bathroom camera alone is a serious felony. The defamation claim for the false theft accusation is solid. And the wage theft gives us a third angle." He said we could pursue all 3 simultaneously. I told him to start drafting. But before the letter went out, I had one more thing to do. I went back to the house for one final shift. I know, it sounds insane, but my lawyer and I had discussed it. We needed them to confirm the cameras on record. I arrived at the usual time. I played with Tyler. I helped him with a puzzle. I smiled at Christine when she handed me a glass of water. And at a certain point, casually, while David was in the room, I said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about the missing money. I'd really like to clear my name. Is there any way I could see the footage from the cameras?" Christine didn't hesitate. She said, "We don't need to show you anything. We saw everything. We have cameras all over this house." David nodded. That was it. That was the moment. On my recording, in Christine's own voice, an admission that they had cameras throughout the house, that they had been watching me, and that they were using that surveillance to make accusations against me. My lawyer listened to the recording the next morning and said, with what I can only describe as quiet satisfaction, "This is exactly what we needed." The letter went out that afternoon. It was 4 pages long. It outlined the illegal surveillance charges, the defamation claim, the wage theft, and the recorded admission. It included a demand for full payment of wages, damages, and legal fees, and it gave them 72 hours to respond. They responded in about 40 minutes. Christine called my phone 6 times in a row, then David called twice, then Christine called again. I didn't answer any of them. Then the text started, long ones, rambling, contradictory, increasingly panicked. The cameras were standard security. The theft accusation was a misunderstanding. They never meant to imply anything. They deeply respected me and hoped we could resolve this privately. They offered to pay me for the shifts. Then they offered to pay double, then triple. I forwarded every message to my lawyer and continued not responding, because every message they sent was another piece of evidence. Every explanation was a contradiction of the last one. Every apology was an admission. A week later, they received a formal notice from the police requesting a statement in connection with an investigation into illegal surveillance. I know this because Christine sent me a message that said in full capitals that I had destroyed their family and that I had no idea what I had done. I read it once. I showed it to my lawyer. He added it to the file. 2 weeks after that, we reached a settlement. I won't share the exact amount because part of the agreement was confidentiality, but I will tell you that it was significantly more than 2 nights of babysitting wages. They had to remove all cameras from the home. They had to sign a written statement confirming that the theft accusation was false and that I had never taken anything from their house. And they had to pay my legal fees in full. I think about the Harmons sometimes, not with anger. That left a long time ago. But I think about the particular kind of arrogance it takes to look at a young woman who needs money and decide that she is powerless, that she can be watched, accused, cheated, and dismissed, that she has no options and no recourse and no one who will believe her. That kind of arrogance is its own trap, because the more certain you are that someone has no power, the less carefully you watch what you say in front of them. And Christine Harmon told me exactly what I needed to know, in her own kitchen, on my recording, because she was absolutely certain I was too scared and too broke to do anything about it. She was wrong on both counts. I was scared, but I was also paying attention, and sometimes that is more than enough. I enrolled in school that fall, paid the first semester myself in full without taking out a loan. I still babysit sometimes. Different families, better instincts about which houses feel right. I check rooms more carefully than I used to. I know what to look for now. But mostly I carry something with me from that experience that has nothing to do with money or cameras or legal settlements. It's what my lawyer said when I signed the final paperwork and asked him if he had any advice going forward. He thought about it for a second and said, "Stay calm, document everything, and never let anyone convince you that you don't have options." I wrote it down that night when I got home. I still have it. I think my father would have said the same thing.